So we're back on a Monday streaming our quick battles, except this time you'll see over there our new sort of matchup with like best of 3 counter thing. And we have that because we're using my ranked ladder bot on Discord. So that's something that you can join by scrolling down below. And yeah, it operates essentially the same as quick battles, just that you'll be seeing a lot more, a lot stronger play online. And you will also see here. Yeah, you'll be seeing a lot of much stronger play. And also tournament rules along with tournament quality maps. So all in all, it's you'll essentially be getting the same content except at a much higher quality. Very excited for that as we get into this game. Now, we are playing as Chaos against the Tomb Kings. Practicing our counter picks here because with Chaos you do have Archaon and Shaggoths who are very strong at dueling single entities. They both of them can put out a lot of damage. Archaon has immune to psychology with the item that I gave him. So we're expecting them to hit pretty hard, especially given the fact the Tomb Kings here don't have a lot of monsters by the looks of it. They also don't have, well, I guess there is this Necro Sphinx, but aside from that, not a whole ton. So I think Archaon and the Shaggoths should do pretty well. There's also not a lot of ranged fire shooting into them, which means that they should be able to dominate here. Now, a big fight does begin in the center with many of the Tomb Kings infantry bogging me down. There's that Necro Sphinx and Cetra, but Cetra isn't the best duelist. He does decently, but he's not the best duelist. And I think we'll be able to take the fight there, so we just dive in. Pop a bunch of buffs on Archaon, and then slowly watch as he takes a ton of damage. We're actually going to have to pull out with him. But now that we do have infantry support and that the Shaggoth is actually landing some hits, I think should be in a bit of a better position. We're also going to be flanking around with our halberds, since they're not too worried about getting charged by cavalry. And if they get caught out by these chariots, they actually have enough mass now where that's not especially scary. Our other goal is going to be shutting down all the single entities here of the Tomb Kings. And also this Casket of Souls, which does a lot versus our infantry. So we have our halberds moving in, we have Forsaken moving in, and it looks like we will manage to close in on top of it. These big vortex spell comes down on my infantry though, and that wildly swings things in the favor of the Tomb Kings. There's also a big rampage on Archaon due to this Tomb Prince, and Archaon might actually die here. Wow, that was a huge swing. Archaon comes out of rampage, but extremely beat up, and hopefully our horsemen can peel for him here. Otherwise, may spell doom for him. Cetra does chase after him. And the Sphinx too, but this buys time for my for my Shaggoth to put in a little bit of damage. Hopefully it can do well against this Sphinx, but I'm a little bit skeptical. Let's see, some Kefir Guard over here too are pretty threatening. So this is a pretty scary situation. I'm going to give a buff to its melee defense to try and retreat with the Shaggoth before it dies, but it is getting hounded down by a Tomb Prince, and things are looking pretty bad, but I don't think they're over yet. We do have our halberds here, And with their support, we might be able to do well. Only big worry though is that Archaon is getting beat up extremely badly. Not only that, the Tomb Prince still lives. And there we go, Archaon getting caught up by Cetra. He's getting caught up by some horsemen. He's on the verge of routing. And that is not a great situation to be in. We will be able to return fire and get in some damage though with our horsemen throwing their javelins in and charging. Archaon 2 is no slouch in combat, and he actually hits Cetra for quite a bit. Actually, no, this is Arkan the Black, jeez. But nevertheless, he puts in a lot of damage. But will it be enough? We're on the verge of army losses, and we actually need to get some big hits on this Sphinx. Otherwise, we'll hit full army losses, and that will just be game. So, trying to get in as much damage as possible, sort of a Hail Mary move. Try and not hit army losses. We'll have to see how that goes. We do still have a bunch of our halberds, but we're running out of single entities here. And that is looking like it's gonna be GG. So, well played to our opponent. And yeah, man, we really just ate that AoE there. I think just a big old misplay. Accidentally just letting ourselves get God, I can't remember the name of that AoE spell, but whatever. We'll figure it out later. Now, I am managing a lot, so do forgive me if we are a little bit slow on the draw here. I need to boot up some stuff too, but we can go into some analysis real quick. Although, I think we were in a pretty nice lead up until that huge AoE came in. My horsemen too were actually surprisingly ineffective compared to how well they usually do. And in the future, I might just run more infantry instead. These guys, they did not have a fun time getting shot up by the Casket of Souls. And also these skeleton horsemen archers, which did actually pay for themselves quite a bit. I'd still have to worry about the chariots, but if we got enough warrior halberds, I think that would have done well. So there we go. Gee. So this next game against Raizel is going to be Wood Elves against Beastmen. And as you can see, we are down one game. So if we lose another one, it means that we have lost the best of 3, and we'll have to queue up for another one. For our armies, or at least for my army, I've gone for a heavy infantry focus, trying to win the infantry fight with some blade singers. Let's see here. We might use Whirling Death. They're not fighting against Bestigors. And also a lot of Dryads and Spears. So these guys will be able to beat Beastmen Chaff, and the Spears will hopefully be able to ward off their cavalry. Our Sylvan Knights will be hanging in the back, because I plan to use my Deepwood Scouts to kill any archers. So with that out of the way, we'll move on to the Beastmen forces, which are pretty slim. There's some Ungor Spearmen herd coming in at the start, but they are not very threatening at all, especially to Dryads. What's a little bit more scary though are these Gore herd, and of course these Minotaurs that are fast approaching us. Have our spears though at the ready to fight against them. And these Centaurs will be coming in, but we're going to position our spears along the right side to on the right side, so that we can't get flanked too easily. Orion is going to be fighting these Chaos Spawn while our Sylvan Knights begin cycle charging, and hopefully they'll be able to win it here. We'll throw down an Earthblood, keep those Sylvan Knights afloat, while our Deepwood Scouts, let's see. Guess they'll probably best suited to shoot the Sons of Goros, although they do have a lot of armor, so maybe not the best target, but they're doing decent damage. I also want to throw down a Pendulum to clear the infantry here. It will let our spears kill these Butchers of Kalkengard. That's going to be the plan. Horn of the Wild Hunt a little bit late on my part, just since I don't play too many Wood Elves. Means that we sort of lost a lot of damage, and another purple sun does come down from our opponent. Apparently, he likes it as much as I like my pendulums. And it gets decent damage, but this time we weren't nearly as clumped up as before. So things are still, yeah, things are going okay. But we're not out of the woods yet. Cavalry's coming in through the gaps in our lines, but it actually stalls up, which allows our spears to actually engage onto them. Let's see, some of our Deep Wood Scouts are getting caught up in Chaos Spawn, not the best situation. And if we can disengage, that would help us out. Orion, in the meantime, is going to be taking out the Butchers of Kalkengard. Hopefully, he'll be able to do okay there. Preferably taking out models too, since that will mean that they, yeah, if you can take out models, that should prevent them from healing. He's also putting in a lot of damage on this Bray Shaman of Death, getting him to rout, but it's only a terror rout, so not as good as it could have been. We're also lagging behind on the balance of power, which is it is a thing that just happens because that's just how balance of power works as beastmen. But I do think we are falling behind a little bit. We'll have to see. It really depends on how well these Sylvan Knights do, and also will depend on how things change once these Chaos Spawn disintegrate. There is still a normal unit of Chaos Spawn, so we'll be using Sylvan Knights to try and take them out. And once they're gone, it's really just cavalry and some infantry here. But everything's relatively elite for the beastmen, so we will have to be quite careful. I think a lot of this will also come down to our cavalry and how well they do. And given the fact that they're getting surrounded by Centaurs, and with the Sons of Goros actually ROR charging in the back, I think my Sylvan Knights will probably be taking a lot of damage. So I'm going to sacrifice them and use some hounds to rout off the cavalry, which works out pretty well. We do still lose the Sylvan Knights though, and things are looking quite dicey. Let's see, it's just Orion at this point, and my opponent has done a good job keeping Orion, sort of just ignoring him for most of the fight. Which means that he can just cycle charge him towards the end of the game. But we may still be able to pull through just through the fact that he has terror. There's a big problem though. We are about to lose our spear support. Means it's just gonna be Orion. And oh dear, it looks like we also overchased with some dryads here. And there we go. It's come down to this. And Orion in the late game is going to be brought down quite low. He does have his physical resistance, and in a second he'll have the Cloak of Isha too. But he has a lot of work to do. There are the Butchers of Kalkengard and a lot of Centaurs left that we'll have to deal with. So I'm thinking, despite Orion being pretty hard to kill here, I'm quite sure he'll die unless we get some very good AoEs. So we'll just see how that goes. Might as well stick to it in the end, as this is the final game, and it'll give us a good idea of how strong Orion is here. One big player though is Moger is actually alive, and he actually manages to kill off Orion. So that's going to be GG in a 2-0 victory for Raizel. Very well played. There we go. Whoops, that's F2. There we go. And a solid win. So, for our build, I'm not sure how confident I felt with it. If we look at our actual infantry here, none of them really got a lot of value. I was trying to push to win the infantry fight, but that didn't really play out how I would have wanted. The Sylvan Knights too did okay. I think I could have been a lot more active with them too. And I'm wondering if I used the Horn of the Wild Hunt, if that would have swung things in our favor. But I might just want to go a different build against Beastmen next time. I wasn't feeling crazy confident with that. So Yeah, I think we'll call it a game. As for the Blade Singers, I think they did okay. But yeah, interesting for sure. Maybe Kite would do better, but something to experiment. Game though. So this next game, we've moved on to the next best of 3. We are up against Butcherbird9, facing up against the Beastmen with our Wood Elves. For our build, we've opted for a kite style with a lot of cavalry. Actually, almost purely cavalry, except for our lords and these Deepwood Scouts. So, the idea is that we're going to be using Horn of the Wild Hunt along with massive amounts of cycle charging to take out the Beastmen. We should have an advantage on the cavalry front. So we're feeling pretty confident. As for the map, it works out okay for kite style, since it is relatively large and there aren't too many vanguards that we have to worry about. So let's see how it goes. Butcherbird does say he is ready. I think we are too. We'll just have to turn off fire at will. And we're good to go. So let's do it. So looking at the armies, we're seeing some harpies, some centaurs, and that's about it so far. The Beastmen infantry is quite prone to being invisible a lot of the time. And it does look like some of them were hiding behind this hill. So we can expect at least 1 unit of Gore Herd, which means a straight up fight would be a little bit scary for us. And there's also a ton of centaurs too that we do have to worry about. So okay. Interesting, yeah, pretty standard by the looks of it. See here. Oh, and there's actually quite a bit of strength in from the Beastmen. It looks like a straight up fight is off the table for us with those double gore bulls. So we're going to have to rely on taking out most of the infantry before we go for that guy. And before we take out the infantry, it's going to have to be taking out all of these centaurs. There are some Ungor Spearman shields, so we don't really want to waste our ammunition firing into them. We'll simply hold and use our cavalry here to shoot at the harpies. And we do find a target though in these Ungor raiders. So we'll use our Deepwood Scouts to loose a volley towards them and hopefully get a little bit of value there. Meanwhile, we're just going to continue kiting back using Orion to push back this cavalry. Another volley towards these Ungor raiders can't hurt either, since the centaurs will be taking a lot of damage here from a big old cavalry charge. And I think those guys should be going out soon. We'll see though, and nice. With the help of Orion, we actually get a terror route, and we can pull back with these Glade Riders. We actually clumped up pretty aggressively with them, which was a misplay, but thankfully we weren't punished too bad for it. So there we go. A nice trade for us, but now we're seeing some centaurs are moving in, and we're just gonna countercharge them with our cavalry. And the theory is that our superior cavalry force should be able to win it here. We no longer have our charge buff, but it might not be needed since there's just only a couple units of centaurs here. Just once again have to really make sure that we don't take any big spells to the face. Alright, and there we go. Looks like we've successfully dealt with the cavalry. Many of them are getting routed off. And once again, we're going to disengage. That's because the Beastmen, without their cavalry, are not extremely mobile at this point. And that means that we can actually disengage without taking too much damage. So that's going to be the plan. We managed to get out, but harpies are still mobile. They do get close, but our Deepwood Scouts make short work of them. And the next goal, I'd say, is to take out these archers with the Deepwood Scouts while using our cavalry to keep these spearmen infantry back. Worst case scenario, they have to brace. And if they brace, it means that they're not advancing towards my archers. So it's very important that we stay as active as we can with our cavalry here to make sure that our Deepwood scouts have enough time to use up all their ammunition. We are taking return fire from these Ungor raiders though. So let's see if we can use our Deepwood scouts to take care of that. They're going to loose some volleys over there while we pull back our cavalry. And this mix of archers and cavalry should be able to help us get value, since braced spears will still have a hard time if they're getting cycle charged, and any support that comes in to stop my cavalry from charging will get shot by the Deepwood scouts. Now let's see, we also have some injured troops here, and given that this is setting out to become a pretty long kite game, we're going to be as efficient with our healing as possible, grouping up 4 units, since that is the maximum amount of units that can be healed with a single AoE spell. We're going to group them up and overcast for what should be a pretty efficient heal on all of our cavalry here. And we're just going to pull back now. Orion has screened out the Beastmen army at least a tiny bit. So that gave us a good amount of time to use our healing. And I think we're good to begin getting back into the cycle charging. Now the Beastmen backline is mostly Gore Herd. They don't have charge defense against large, which means our cavalry should be able to overwhelm them. Meanwhile, we'll be using our Glade Riders to protect the Deepwood scouts. And in protecting them, it means that our cavalry can play much more aggressively now. They'll just be cycling around, targeting these Gore Herds specifically, along with any raiders that get out of position, while our Deepwood scouts take out any raiders in the back that are more defended. So like so, we're just going to charge in. We'll use a Horn of the Wild Hunt too. I think that might have been a tiny bit late, but it's still fine. We can still use the charge bonus here. Deal with all these Ungor. A big charge of Centaurs does come in, but a counter charge from our cavalry might do okay. Ooh man, but it doesn't look like it. Especially with the help of those Gorbals, it looks like we might have had a little bit of a misplay there. We actually lose a good amount of cavalry, and I think at this point it's best to just cut our losses and try disengaging where we can, as we just took a lot of damage. Let's see, we can recover though by throwing down some AoEs and hopefully getting in some good trades against the Beastmen. And that's going to be the hope. Orion with his wolves getting some pretty good damage, and it does help out a tiny bit, but losing cavalry means that we don't have much to deal with all these Ungor spearmen. Let's see here, there is not too much cavalry left for the Beastmen though, thankfully, but there's also not much cavalry left for us. We also almost lose our spellcaster there, and our Glade Riders are taking a lot of damage too, but they are still at high enough numbers to be quite threatening, and we'll be using them to push back these Gore Herd. And there we go, they do pretty well, but man, they clump up quite a bit, which could lead to some issues in that AoE is pretty painful. So let's just disengage with them and see if we can regroup once again. Now, taking stock of the battlefield, the Beastmen do still have a lot of troops left. Balance of power is looking pretty good for them too. But a lot of that is in infantry and troops that are scattered, like these guys over here, the spearmen in the back. This is good for us, since it means that we can chase them down to recover some of our balance of power. So we're going to do that. since there's not a whole lot of mobility left. We also want to regroup our cavalry once again, so we can get them ready for another heal. And there we go, our Glade Riders do help with the cleaning up. It is just a few units left for the Beastmen. Many of the troops here have routed off, although it is Ungor Raiders, so they might have rallied. Have to be a little bit wary there. But otherwise, I think we're doing okay. The real main threat here is really just these Gorbles. And Gorbles are, they are a bit scary. They can do some damage to Orion, but geez, he knocks one of them right out of there. And even if Orion gets surrounded here, I think we're okay. Oh man, a Devolve, or I think it's what? No, a Traderkin comes down, gets into pretty nice AoE damage. But I think we're still okay. Oh no, it looks like it actually does a lot of damage, and that might actually kill some of my cavalry here, getting them routed off. Not optimal, but we can keep throwing down heals. And now that Orion's actually in the fight, we can use our Deep Wood Scouts to shoot into the back of the infantry. Orion with his healing is not too worried about taking damage here as long as he doesn't die. So I think he should be fine. But famous last words, let's see if he dies or not. Our Deep Wood Scouts too are going to use the remainder of their ammunition just to pepper down these the infantry. And Orion, he's going to be trying and escaping here, but he's having a rough time. We've used the Horn of the Wild Hunt. He does have the Cloak of Isha active. And with a ton of AoEs, he might be able to do okay. He has done well in the fact that he's routed off the Beastmen troops. But man, those Gorbles are really putting in a lot of damage. Orion, at very low HP now, could very well get taken out. But we do have support moving in for him, and that should be able to block up the Gorbles. Orion will continue to try and escape, and in the meantime, while the Beastmen are distracted, we can also break all of their infantry here. We'll be bringing in Orion, we'll be charging them in the back, and with that, it should just be the single entities left for the Beastmen. Our spellcaster, having successfully distracted for Orion, can now disengage. And if we can just get these guys routed off, I think we might actually be in quite a good position. Seems like that risky bait might have paid off, since just letting Orion fight by himself has really bought us time to deal with all the infantry. So now it is just the Gorbles and Malagor, which means that we're set up for a game of cycle charging with Orion. And I think that is going to be our plan here, now that our cavalry has cleared out all the infantry. A few more are coming back, but we expect them to get terrified off, and without any support, they should... yeah, they should get routed pretty quickly. Our Gorbles are coming back. It looks like they might want to be diving into Orion, but we have enough cavalry here where we're fine with Orion taking the fights against them. Gorbles will be taking a lot of damage from the cavalry, and they can't really focus Orion at this point, although he is still at very low HP, so we'll have to be quite careful with him. Disengaging with him now before the Gorble accidentally kills him, which does have a chance of just ending the game there with some mass routes. We definitely don't want to be losing our lord, so we're going to be playing safe with Orion. Meanwhile, Malagor, dueling my Spell Singer, is not super scary. His combat stats aren't amazing, and given that we're out of Winds of Magic, I think that's a fine situation to be in. The main problem though is that if he casts another Traderkin, that would be pretty scary given how clumped up we are. And I'm sort of just banking that my opponent doesn't have the Winds of Magic, given that we're already in the extreme late game now. But it's always a threat. However, with the Gorbles now dead, it means that Orion really can't be killed. Malagor doesn't have enough punching power to actually kill him. So I think even if another Traderkin does come down, Orion will probably be able to win the game for us. Cavalry 2 can take care of the infantry, and as they do, it's army losses for the Beastmen, and GG. Oh boy. So, a dicey game there, extremely long. And we almost lost Orion at the end there. Double Gorbel was actually very scary. But in the end, it was just about taking out the infantry and all their support. I think our Deepwood Scouts probably did quite well, and they did. Meanwhile, my cavalry did about decent. I had one major misplay with them, losing a lot of them to some Centaurs, so I'll have to be careful with that next time. And oh wow, 3,500 value on Malagor, mostly from spells on my Wild Riders probably. But a fun game, some nice back and forths, some misplays here and there, but pretty good. And nice. So this next game, we have counterpicked Bretonia with Lizardmen. Generally a bad matchup for Bretonia. And this does happen since Bretonia do have 3 factions that they have a hard time against. That being Vampire Coast, Lizardmen, and Dwarves. So, if you ever see them first pick, it is generally preferable. Or yeah, if you ever see Bretonia first picked, if you can just master those 3 factions, then you should be able to take them out. But by no means is it an easy win. Vampire Coast and Lizardmen and Dwarves too, really. You do need to know them to actually beat Bretonia with them. But if they are giving you trouble in tournaments, I would recommend those as your 3 picks. So a little bit of meta out of the way. Here we go. Lizardmen versus Bretonia, game 2 against Butcherbird. Let's see what he has brought against us. A decently sizable army of archers and trebuchets, about as meta as you can get when it comes to Bretonia. He has brought some mounted yeomen though, a little bit, actually quite off meta from what you would expect. But other than that, everything is pretty standard. You got Lewin, you got a paladin, and that's about it. Now we are going to advance to threaten the trebuchets with our solar engines. And we also are going to advance along the left flank to make sure that these archers on the right can't, we don't want them to be able to, to shoot my tiny little box here, since this matchup very much revolves around that archer play. And whether or not those archers can take out things like Mazdamundi. Some archers also looks like they're trying to dodge my drop box, but we do manage to actually land that pretty well. And that's already a very nice lead for us. Now trebuchets are firing in onto my forces here. We will have to be a little bit careful. Let's see, some more archers do come in. We'll drop rocks, and it looks like another pretty good hit. Does get them on the verge of routing. Solar engine fire does finish the job. So we're doing pretty good so far. We've taken out many of the archers, but now this time it looks like we've missed to drop rocks. But we are also in range of the cavalry now, which means our solar engines can begin firing there. Now, without many of these archers actually online to fire at my monsters, we are actually pretty happy just sitting back and yeah, just chilling in our box. Even though we are taking damage from the trebuchets, we are quite happy here because just because the trebuchets don't have that much damage per second. And meanwhile, our solar engines will be getting in a lot of value. Mazdamundi will be clearing out archers himself. And all that means that we're in a pretty good position. Ooh, another nice place to drop rocks too. Let's see how well that goes. We'll try to push my opponent's micro also by moving in many pterodons at once. And it looks like that may have worked, as we get a very nice solid drop box on the archers there. Getting in some good damage. We do get some of our spears charged in though, but we can't punish this with a net. And that means that this cavalry is as good as dead at this point. They're fully surrounded by spears, and they're taking a lot of fire from our solar engines. Cavalry here too charge into our spears, but they charge into the front, which means our charge bonus actually negates a lot of that damage, and they're going to have a hard time too. So there we go. We've dealt with the archers. A lot of the knights have taken a lot of damage, and at this point I'd say it's really just Lewin that we have to worry about. These archers are at such low HP that they're extremely prone to routing. And as long as we don't take too much damage from the trebuchets just by clumping up, I think we'll be fine. Mazdamundi can duel Lewin quite well, especially with his healing and buffs that we'll be throwing in now. And it's just it should be a matter of time before he goes down. We'll throw down a net also, just to stop him from running and cycle charging. He does manage to fly up though, but we do have our solar engines, which can start picking him off. We'll check to make sure he doesn't have his missile resist ability up, and he doesn't, which means that the solar engines will be doing very close to full damage, and that should be able to take him out. Some of our shots do miss, but that is just the nature of solar engines. But it doesn't really matter with Lewin getting this low at this point. Some more spells to take out the archers means that we don't have to spread as wide with our army. They can just focus on staying close and tightly grouped up together instead. And it looks like a Hail Mary attempt from Lewin going to be coming down from our opponent. This is due to the fact that at this point I think he's quite behind, and really a snipe on Mazdamundi is what he needs to pull out a win here. But Mazdamundi is quite healthy. Lewin's still taking a lot of damage, and if he routs, our Pterodon riders are in place to chase him off. He is at this point now getting extremely close to routing, and there we go, he does go. So having prepared for it, we're going to bring in our Pterodon riders now, and they're going to begin chasing him. We are out of ammo on these Pterodons too, so outside of chasing troops off, their main goal is going to be shutting down these archers. Mazdamundi in the meantime has to deal with Paladin by the looks of it. Some AoEs to deal with archers too should help. And with that, I think we should be good, unless this Paladin manages to pull out a miracle, which you never know. We will still have to be a bit careful. Our solar engines too definitely don't want to be taking too much damage, so we'll be bringing our spears in to support them. And it's just going to be Mazdamundi focusing on this Paladin. Oh no, and it looks like Lewin actually does come back. Something that I thought could happen, and this is something that will sometimes happen if your troops chasing him are extremely weak. You'll see this with gyrocopters, and apparently Pterodon riders too, because there's actually if the troops chasing are significantly weaker than the guy that's routing, they can actually come back. And you can see even a Lewin at low HP does come back, even with Pterodons hot on his tail. However, it's not too much of a problem. Mazdamundi is still healthy and healing too. There aren't any more archers either, and with army losses, looks like that's going to be it for the Bretonnians. A little bit dicey there, with some misplay on chasing Lewin. But given all the other advantages we had throughout that game, I think we were good to go. A lot of this matchup comes down to how well you can use your archers to snipe out Mazdamundi. And just because Butcherbird couldn't really get that to happen, sadly, sadly he could not win the game there. You can see the value on these archers, especially the ones that I shut down, were extremely low. But even so, the other three got their value in, and it just shows how dangerous they are and why it's important to take them out. Meanwhile, the trebuchets that were firing almost all game barely got any value, which is why I was comfortable just leaving them alive for such a long time. So there we go. This is this matchup feels like it's reached equilibrium at this point, where both builds are extremely similar a lot of the time, and it just comes down to play. Game. So we're on to the next best of 3 against Tequila Sunset, playing against the dwarves, which is why I'm running such a crazy build today. We have 2 depth guards, a whole bunch of sirens, fleet admiral, and a gunnery white with a queen bess. It's almost unheard of when it comes to my types of builds, except for maybe the sirens, I guess. But the reason we're doing this is because queen bess with manual fire can actually do a lot against dwarves. As long as you can aim it and the ground is relatively flat, it is quite devastating. Now, speaking of, we still need actually some flat ground, so we'll have to be a little bit careful here. And oh geez, let's see here. 1 second. Yeah, let's see. I need to help with something real quick. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll be back in just a quick second. Let's see. I should stop the recording. So we're back. For everyone on YouTube, you no need. You didn't have to wait. Oh god. All right. So, getting into the game, we're using the sirens to flank around the back, and they're going to be dealing with rangers. Queen bess is going to be manual firing to stay out of range of the cannons, and the advance of our army too means that the cannons can't get too close to bess. Oh geez, I need to exercise more. Anyways, so I'm going to start off by firing a shot. The tick mark here will shoot at about the max range of bess. You can get 50% more range by aiming slightly up. And you can see here that it's not the most accurate, but you can get about the distance you want to. The scatter of queen bess is roughly 1 zombie mob in diameter. And that is what you're going to have to be dealing with when you fire with it. So sometimes even a well-aimed shot will still miss. So we're going to shoot another one this time towards the cannon. And we're pretty happy firing away with queen bess here, because we have the extra ammunition from the gunnery white that we bought. Now we also don't want to get caught out by rangers, which looks like they're probably somewhere. Just that we're not sure exactly where. We also really don't want bess to get in range of the cannons. We're going to pull her back as we begin the advance with our army. The goal here is to shut down the cannons, and then after that, pull back our army so that we can begin shooting the dwarves with bess. So let's see, just continuing to pull back here. And as soon as we shut down those cannons, we are free to disengage. We have a bunch of tools to do that, and we will be able to chase off the dwarves with these sirens here. The Leviathan is nice just to the Leviathan's good for just tanking damage, and we'll be using it sort of like a chariot here. Oh huh, there's also Ultwar's Raiders, which, wow, we actually hit them with bess. Would you look at that? In fact, it looks like we could just throw in another shot there, since those guys are so clumped up. And we'll just be moving in with our sirens now. So there we go. A summon from our caster. Should be able to hold these guys up. moving in with our Sirens. And the Leviathan can begin sweeping around the back. Our Depth Guard want to be engaged on the Slayers. They actually do a lot of damage on them. Our Sirens want to be fighting everything else, essentially. So that's how we're going to be moving in. Our zombies are nearly here too. But our caster is taking a lot of damage. Going to disengage with her now. We're also going to bring in our Fell Bats. It's because the Fell Bats do... Fell Bats are pretty great for shutting down different tools. Also going to use the Leviathan to take out these Ultrar Raiders. We have our Sirens too, moving in to take them out. And nice, it looks like we're about to close in onto the cannons, which is our main goal here. In the meantime, Bess is just getting in some free shots while the cannons are occupied. And once they're down, we're good. Some Fell Bats actually can move in now. Take the cannons out. Our Depth Guard are getting in range, and our Leviathan is causing havoc along the back lines. Things are going about as well as we want it to. Nice, we even shatter off the cannons, which is especially important. So we're beginning to think about disengaging here. Although that's not fully required, since Bess is can just keep firing from long range, no problem. It is running low on ammunition though, so the gunnery wight can give it ammo, his ability, and we can do that through the HUD at the bottom. That should put us in a pretty good place. Nice, there we go. Sirens are doing great. And just having our elite troops here with the rush style build might be able to win it all on its own. The Leviathan has done a great job. You can tell because it's at 1/3 HP. And that means that it tanked a lot of damage without dying, which is all we really hoped for it. Meanwhile, our caster can help chase off troops. Same with our bats, and our Depth Guard are doing great against these Slayers. You can see they've actually taken out the Dragonback Slayers and barely taken any damage themselves. They'll also be able to do the same for these Rangers as long as they don't get shot at. That's the main weakness of the Depth Guard, just taking ranged damage. And that's why we have the Leviathan and all these disruption tools here, just to buy time for our Depth Guard to do their thing. So that's going to be the case. Queen Bess is also in range of all of these dwarf units too, so we'll be using her to begin shelling them. And if things ever get dicey, we can just retreat and we have the entire map essentially to ourselves to kite back towards Queen Bess. We'll also have to worry about Grombrindle too, because he does have magic damage and he'll be tearing apart my Sirens. So that's something to be wary about, but he is just a foot lord, and even if he does kill a few Sirens, it's not too bad as long as it's not prolonged. And there we go. It looks like Bess is doing great against all the dwarf warriors, missing some shots and probably not getting a whole ton of value. In fact, I think this game really, a lot of it just came down to the fact that we were able to disrupt all of the ranged troops for the dwarves. And there we go, we've routed off a unit of Rangers. And we're heading into the late game here. So what will often happen, because we're avoiding Grombrindle all the time here, is you'll see that it's just Grombrindle left against a bunch of Sirens and Depth Guard, which is a really bad matchup for them. But that brings in why we've brought our Fleet Admiral here. And that is because the Fleet Admiral, she has a pistol. And with the ammo from the gunnery wight, she can actually deal with Grombrindle quite easily. So we're totally fine on that front and not worried. The gunnery wight too has a lot of ammunition, so if it does come down to that, I think we'll be just fine. But still, we'll have to make sure we don't let off. It's important that we take out all of this infantry first, and especially important that we take out all these range units. Some Slayers too definitely need to be getting chased off by Depth Guard. And if we can manage that, then I think we're good to go. Queen Bess has served its purpose, using most of its ammunition. And without many dwarf infantry troops left, we won't need to give Bess more ammunition. Instead, we'll be saving it all for this fleet admiral. And you know what? Just because of that, we're going to be moving our gunnery white up to give her ammunition now, while we still have time. Our rotting Leviathan has mostly served its purpose too, having disrupted the back line. But it's still pretty bad that it is dying. We would much prefer to have a rotting Leviathan in the late game, just as a tool to cycle charge Grombrindle. Ooh, and a pretty good hit from Queen Bess is nice. Just putting in whatever damage it can before it's off the field. I think we're good. Let's see here. Yeah. So, as we head into the late game, the main threats here, let's see, is really just Grombrindle. I think so. Queen Bess is out of ammunition. We still have our depth guard. And I think we just kite Grombrindle now. So we can disengage with some of our troops here. In fact, I will use some sirens to finish off dwarf warriors. And it's just going to be shooting Grombrindle with our 2 heroes. So we'll bring them up. They have very good range. So there's not too much of a threat of getting caught here. And just to conserve on ammunition, it's probably better to get a little bit closer before we start firing. We also have our pistol summons, and we could also throw down an invocation of Nahek too, which I think will be good here. Optimally, I would have gotten this unit of sirens there to Nahek also, but it doesn't matter too much. With our ranged troops, I'm actually quite confident that we've won this game. So, just moving in to kill all of these melee troops. There are actually a few ranged units for the dwarves, but with all these guys getting terrified off by the banshees, I think we'll be just fine. Grombrindle already down to half health is a good sign for us, and we can just focus fire him with our heroes now, since we already have the depth guard disrupting these range tools. Some slayers are engaged on my lord also, but she can move while firing, so we'll just turn on fire at will, and I think she'll be good too. Gunnery white, however, is a little bit more problematic since he has to stand and shoot, but if Grombrindle chases him, he'll be taking damage from our lord. And there we go. Instead, deciding to chase our lord means that we'll be able to kite him down. And we can even throw down a zombie summon just to end this a little bit quicker for poor Grombrindle here. There we go. We have the zombie pistol summon, and they'll be able to put in damage while our gunnery white now kites away from Grombrindle. A slow and painful fate for him. And a win for the good old Vampire Coast against the dwarves. It got a little bit dicey there at some points, but I feel like I felt pretty confident for most of the game there. Especially once we started running over all the rangers. Oh yeah, when Queen Bess lands a solid hit, it really is just the best. Here we go, Grombrindle. Getting very low now, taking a big hit from my gunnery white, taking shots from the pistols, and more ammunition on my lord here. Should be able to seal his fate. And here we go. Ooh, he does slow down a slow, but he's already taken a lot of damage. My lord is still firing in on him, but he lands a very big hit. My lord is getting caught at this point. I expect she will probably die, but we've secured enough of a lead where we're fine. If we were really worried, usually we would take a unit of infantry and have them nearby to support. And I think we will bring in our sirens. But our lord looks to have properly disengaged at this point. And it's just going to be a shot in on Grombrindle to finish him off, or a concession from our opponent. And there we go. One way to deal with the dwarves is Vampire Coast. Oftentimes you'll see mass ranger builds here as a response to bombers and so on. And that can get countered pretty well by the Rotting Leviathan. We saw that it put in a lot of disruption. And it did very well at that job. A lot of these rangers weren't able to fire for a lot of the time. Our depth guard too. Basically one of the only matchups where they're useful. They were able to cut down the slayers, and that was basically the only job. For Queen Bess, it wasn't an optimal situation because of the cannons, but by repositioning it, we were still able to get a whole ton of value. So there we go, yeah. Vampire Coast vs. Dwarves. Now all that out of the way, we're moving into our second match against Tequila Sunset, as the Wood Elves counterpicking into Lizardmen. Now it's not a matchup that I think is particularly favored for the Wood Elves. In fact, I think it's pretty even on both sides. But it's definitely a matchup that I want to get practiced. Now I have recently discovered Wildwood Rangers are very strong against Saurus, especially Saurus Spears. So we're going to be using those guys. As for these solar engines, we have some methods to deal with them, but geez, that's a lot of skinks shooting into our Lord here. Going to be putting in pretty good damage. Wow, crazy damage actually. And that is not a great start. Oh man, and a near miss there. And an easier dodge for that one. Now, the reason we have Sisters of Twilight is because we're happy with them taking a lot of we're happy with them taking damage. Well, we're not happy with them taking damage, but we're okay with it because they have a crazy heal. We are burning the ammunition on these skinks, which is pretty important. Because they will often run out of ammo here in this matchup. But we're taking a lot of damage on the sisters here, and I don't know if this is really worth it. We are putting in return fire onto the skinks. The solar engines aren't putting in that much damage themselves, but still, not an optimal trade. Solar engines are now firing in on my ranged troops too. But the scatter shot of the Sisters of Twilight, actually, it even does pretty good damage versus skinks. So I'm feeling like maybe if we just had that, we're trading in decently well. Our thin spaghetti lines too for our ranged troops mean that the solar engines are putting in a lot of damage, and perhaps we can win this game through attrition. Especially if we can keep these Wildwood Rangers alive, that would help a lot too. And maybe we don't even need to snipe out these solar engines to get the win here. We've actually done a lot, push back these skinks, which is great. They're taking a lot of damage really. And our sisters have the heal in the back pocket. Our cavalry too can charge in and take out a lot of these skinks. Our archers are getting in a lot of damage also. It's just we now have to be very wary that our Sisters of Twilight don't get sniped out. Mazdamundi is around too. He's pretty threatening, and oh, it looks like some cavalry's coming in also. But if this cavalry is distracted, it means our Wild Riders can begin putting in some work, but I don't want them to take too much damage from the solar engine. So we'll have to be careful there. Let's see, Sisters of Twilight. I think it's about time they moved in to get healed by my caster here. Should be good. That'll put them in a pretty good place. Now we're also going to be trying to snipe out Mazdamundi. And yeah, we're just going to be sniping out Mazdamundi. These solar engines, I do think that they will be running out of ammunition soon. So yeah, we just won't be killing them. And we'll see how that goes. This is mostly an untested theory. I don't know if it will work exactly. But that's why we're practicing on this ranked ladder. Because it's much better to do this here than in a tournament. Just testing out different strategies. Now, this is a game of attrition. At least it's looking to be turning into that. So, we're going to be using our heals wherever we can. Just buff up our units. That is because by healing our archers and yeah, by healing up our archers, it fewer of them die, it means that we don't have to worry. Well, we'll get a few more shots out of them, essentially. We also want to be using the heals. Oh, I should get my cavalry back here. We're using up the heals while we have high winds of magic, which is important because if we just save it all for the very, very late game, for a big fight, we won't really be able to use it. So we're just using it very efficiently while we can. Speaking of efficiency, we're sort of failing that by losing a lot of our troops here to these skink skirmishers. Actually lost some cavalry there, but not without trading into the cavalry of the lizardmen. And a huge plus is that we actually have our wild riders at very high HP. The Sisters of Twilight, though, are beginning to run pretty low on HP. And even though they have been able to dodge a lot of solar engine shots, a few more hits should take them out. But they are very close to their healing point. Just a few more, 100 more points of damage will actually bring them into that sweet spot where they're going to begin healing. And we're going to be trying to trigger that. Now, if our opponent is wary of that situation happening, then they won't actually bring them below that point. But it looks like just the skinks hitting them for a bit has actually brought the Sisters of Twilight into their healing zone. So in just a few more seconds, we should expect them to get a big heal. And that will mean that they will be ready to dive into combat once again. And there we go. Heal to heal cap. So at this point in the game, both sides are sort of running low on ammunition, but we may have been slightly more efficient. What is actually really important now is we have our cavalry, and when we use that to cycle charge the Saurus, they will be able to get just insane amounts of value. The fact that the solar engines have actually used up all of their ammunition will play a huge part in this. And with the solar engines out of ammo, there's actually nothing to deal with our wild riders. So I think we should be able to just carry out a win now. Mazdamundi does move in to a little bit of a risky position, which does let our Sisters of Twilight move in on a sniping attempt at him. Meanwhile, our Wild Riders can move in to charge onto the Saurus. A nice net does come down on one of them. And possibly an AoE, it does look like that is the case. But we'll have to see how much it does. It actually does an insane amount of damage, so let's just heal that up. And then continue chasing Mazdamundi with the Sisters of Twilight. We've also made a hole in their lines by breaking the Saurus Spears here. Once again, saving our cavalry for the late game is paying off greatly. And our decently healthy Wildwood Rangers should be able to deal with the rest of the Lizardmen infantry here. Mazdamundi is now routing thanks to our sniping attempts from earlier in the game. And you can see just the battered cavalry of the Lizardmen here trying to make a comeback, but sadly there's not much they can do. We traded really well for them. We traded really well against them in the early game. And with that, it's looking like we'll be able to pull out a win. Now, as for the strategy, I don't know if it was fully optimal. Especially since our opponent could have conserved ammo on the solar engines. But at the very least, it shows that that we have enough awareness of the matchup to know that running them out of ammo was an option. So, just looking at the army, using the Sisters of Twilight to burn ammo seemed to work pretty well. And I don't know. I might want to use them again. But the Lizardman can also run skink chiefs, which have like 80 ammunition, just way too much for us to run them out. And that would cause problems. We could try sniping them out with the Sisters though. So it's something to consider. As for the Wildwood Rangers, they are indeed quite strong against Saurus. We saw them just tear them apart, which worked out pretty well. And our archers did, they did pretty good, having used up all of their ammunition. So I would say this build is okay, but still untested. I would need to run a few more, I would still need to do a few more runs of that. And okay, there we go. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. I'll see you guys at the same time tomorrow. Yeah, on Tuesday. Going to be the same content as today, going over a lot of best of threes because we've been having a lot of very nice games using that. If you want to try it out for yourself, you can go to my Warhammer link below, where there are actually quite a few people queued up. At any given point in the day, you can expect about a 30-minute or 1 hour queue time, depending. So all that out of the way, we'll begin the raid. And once again, thank you very much, guys.